also finds that most pastors prioritize leadership and finances over personal development. Michael Harrington reporting.
Faith leaders of several stripes are urgently calling for protecting the rights of worshipers after a group of anti-immigration enforcement protesters disrupted a Sunday service. It happened at Cities Church in St. Paul, Minnesota last weekend. About 36 protesters entered the Southern Baptist Church during the services, some walking right up to the pulpit, others loudly chanting, "ICE out." This is SRN News. Federal prosecutors have served 6 grand jury subpoenas to Minnesota officials, including Democrat Governor Tim Walz. They're all in connection with the recent attacks on ICE agents there. Correspondent Andrew Stewart.
Governor Walz contends the Trump administration is not seeking justice, but only creating distractions. The person familiar with this case was not authorized to speak publicly about ongoing probes. This person spoke to the AP on condition of anonymity. Meanwhile, confrontations with immigration officers in Minnesota are showing no signs of stopping.
That is correspondent Andrew Stewart reporting. Wall Street bounced back early today after President Trump eased fears about violence in Greenland, saying the U.S. does not plan to acquire it by force. Stocks climbed sharply, though investors do continue to seek safety in other avenues, such as gold. Right now, the Dow is up 751 points. This is SRN News.
Isaiah 25:1. O Lord, thou art my God. I will exalt thee. I will praise thy name, for thou hast done wonderful things. Thy counsels of old are faithfulness and truth. A word concerning the worthiness of God from the Bible, Isaiah 25, verse 1.
Are you frustrated by the liberal bent in the news? Tune in to Crosstalk each weekday live at 2 p.m., repeated at 8 p.m. Central Time here on VCY America, your Christian information station.
VCY America is KVCX Gregory and WVIW Bridgeport, Christian Information Radio.
History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
He produced epic films in Hollywood for almost 5 decades and started Paramount Pictures. His name was Cecil B. DeMille, and he died this day, January 21st, 1959. His best-known films include Samson and Delilah, The Ten Commandments, and The Greatest Show on Earth, for which he won an Academy Award. At the opening of the Ten Commandments, Cecil B. DeMille stated, "Man has made 32 million laws since the commandments were handed down to Moses on Mount Sinai, but he has never improved on God's law. They are the charter of human liberty, for there can be no liberty without the law."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk, coming your way from the VCY American Network, based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So glad that you would join us, keeping informed on many, many critical issues. And friends, let me just say at the outset, please thank your station manager for carrying Crosstalk. Many stations that are independently owned and operated, and we trust you'll get behind and support them, thanking them for the information that you glean from this program. Well, friends, all this week, the World Economic Forum is meeting in Davos, Switzerland, and is typical. Today, President Trump gave a stem-winder of a speech, pulling no punches to make his points known. Well, this forum is meeting all this week long. Multiple speakers are taking place every day this week. We are going to, Lord willing, have a wrap-up program on Crosstalk next Tuesday, January 27th, as we're going to be joined by Alex Newman with a full recap of this week's events in Davos. Some amazing things being said and taking place there, and some are wondering about this this new organization of peace that President Trump has established, if this might be a replacement for the UN. So we'll have a lot to talk about that next Tuesday following the conclusion of the World Economic Forum taking place all this week. Now for our topic today. At the outset of Monday's program this week, we brought to your attention the invasion of Cities Church. This is a Southern Baptist Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, and to me it is just despicable what took place Sunday as protesters interrupted the middle of the church service, standing up and screaming just as the scriptures were being opened. Today we're going to bring to you a number of stories and audio clips pertaining to the church invasion. Lord willing, this coming Monday we'll be joined by Bill Federer on a similar matter. It's a reaction by James Madison when Baptists in Virginia had their church services disrupted in the late 1700s. You'll see what took place there, but you'll also see that the disruption of church services is part of the plan of the socialists, communists, and that of Islam. And friends, it's happening even as of this day. We do invite you to join us Monday for Bill Federer. Lord willing, he'll be with us then. But coming back to Minneapolis, St. Paul, I want to think in terms of what I want you to think, what if this had been in your church? And unless this is sharply addressed and curbed, for some it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when this will come to your church. Now, many of you have heard the audio clips yelling out, Renee Good and Ice Out and Hands Up, Don't Shoot. And again, it's despicable that a church service was interrupted as an attempt to score, in my opinion, political points. And in my opinion, also for former CNN host Don Lemon, who is married to another man and was streaming this event live, is somehow trying to make himself relevant again. We're going to air some clips from him. I hope that the Justice Department indeed is going to take swift action. Or, friends, this is going to be a common occurrence in churches all across this country. Now, I would like to begin with this audio clip, and I think it's, I think the term is called projection, isn't it? How ironic that not just but a few weeks ago, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, was morally outraged over the holidays, warning ICE would be targeting church services. Listen in to what he said.
So I would fully expect, and we are preparing for, an influx of more agents, more of the very visible public theatrics of the raids, of the harassments, and you got faith leaders here. I would not put it past this administration to target midnight mass services amongst folks going to worship, because that's who they are.
Isn't that something? Because that's who they are. I wouldn't put it past them. ICE agents are going to target church services. And friends, guess exactly what happened. Just the opposite took place in St. Paul, Minnesota this past Sunday. From the Daily Wire, dozens of protesters crowded into Cities Church in St. Paul on Sunday, part of a clandestine operation to disrupt business as usual, activist leader Nikema Levy Armstrong told Don Lemon, who embedded with the protest group. The protest lasted about 30 minutes, they report, and effectively ended the church services as it drove congregants out. Also being reported to us by CBN, the Department of Justice says it is investigating an anti-ICE protest after demonstrators burst into the St. Paul Church, interrupted Sunday morning services, and accused one of the pastors of working with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In live-stream video footage from former CNN anchor Don Lemon, about 30 protesters with the Racial Justice Network disrupted Cities Church, yelling, "Hands up, don't shoot," and "Ice out." And according to Fox 9, the group went to the church, affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention, to confront a man named David Easterwood, one of the pastors at the church, but also allegedly an active field officer director for ICE in Minnesota, reports CBN.com. In a Facebook post, protesters said they went to the church to demand justice for Renee Good. Easterwood was not at Sunday service. However, the church's lead pastor, Jonathan Parnell, said, quote, "We have asked them to leave, and they have obviously not left. This is unacceptable. This is shameful. It is shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship." WNG.org said the disruption was planned, coordinated as agitators sat through the first part of the service before standing and then the chanting accusations at the pastors and members. The agitators proudly filmed and posted themselves screaming at children, harassing churchgoers, and demanding that they denounce ICE and accusing them of being fake Christians for not standing with their Latino and Somali neighbors. This brazen invasion of Christian worship gathering demonstrates the lawlessness of the modern left. Not content to disrupt lawful law enforcement activity, they have now resorted to targeting law enforcement officers, their families, and anyone connected to them, even in the house of worship. And they're breaking the law by invading a church in order to defend those who broke the law by invading our country. So how should American Christians respond to the arrival of chaos and disorder in our own cities and churches? And according to the article from WNG, they said, first, we ought to pray that our government officials would uphold law and order, fulfilling their God-given mandate to punish evildoers. Second, we ought to grow in our ability to resist such intimidation, to recognize the schemes of the devil are at play. That includes appeals to Christian kindness and love to justify lawbreaking. And finally, we ought to take comfort from the Scriptures, the book of Acts filled with the kind of situations that we're seeing in America today. HotAir.com reports that the event, live streamed by Don Lemon and other citizen journalists, and Lemon himself indicated that he coordinated with the protesters prior to the attack. The whole point of the exercise was to ensure that worshipers would be driven out of their church and that the parishioners would be terrorized and left to wonder whether they could congregate without fear of attacks. Don Lemon is explicitly stating that his intent in going to this church during Sunday services was to traumatize the participants. And according to one writer saying he's confessing to terrorism. He flew to Minneapolis to live stream this protest, having coordinated with people who he had every reason intended to break federal law, participated at least to some extent by badgering and lecturing the pastor. At the very least, they would be equivalent to a journalist being informed of and invited to broadcast a federal crime that seems on its face to be prosecutable, as he is acting as a propagandist for the criminals. Lemon seems to believe that this is a First Amendment-protected activity. In fact, aside from violating basic property rights and arguably being low-level terrorism, it's also a violation of several federal laws. DOJ announces an intention to charge Don Lemon under the Ku Klux Klan Act, and this is an act that makes it illegal to threaten, hurt, or intimidate people to prevent them from exercising their God-given rights. I'd like to play just a few clips here. Don Lemon here, this is from the Don Lemon Show, seeming to have some foreknowledge about what was to take place. Let's listen in.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some...
this is On the Scene Sunday.
Some reconnaissance on the ground, speaking to an organization there that's gearing up for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? So the American flag or whatever, but these are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up, and it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, I can't tell you where they're going.
Yeah, I can't tell you where they're going. He knew full well where they're going. He knew full well what they're going to do. That's my opinion. And after he's watching the group out in the parking lot make their strategies, then he walks up with the group. And here's another scene here from the Don Lemon Show as he was doing this live stream, actually.
How are you?
Good.
Good to see you. They're getting the operation together. Again, this is an operation that is secret, that they invited folks out. Can't tell you what is going to happen, but you're going to watch it live unfold here on the Don Lemon Show. For this reason, It may look like MAGA coded, but there's a reason they have so many white people here. I'm just going to be honest. It's because of the operation that they're doing today. It's important to have allies, as they said, white allies here. So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But there we go. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go. Okay. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here. Thank you guys.
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
To see you. We're on. We're not saying what it is, what's going on, but thank you. Tell us why you're doing this.
So
this is Nakima Levy Armstrong. She's on the show on Friday.
Levy Armstrong, civil rights attorney, longtime activist here in the community, and we protest and do activism in all kinds of ways. This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there, and then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're about to go do right now. We've had a lot of success with the times we have done Operation Pull Up.
Yeah, a lot of success with his Operation Pull Up. And what's very interesting in all of this as well is that Don Lemon, did you catch what he said at the very beginning? He said, "Thank you guys for being here." And then he quickly went, "Thanks for allowing me to be here with you." And I thought it was very interesting in what he was saying there. But in my opinion, knew full well what was going to take place. He was all prepared to go in with his camera and go right alongside with these protesters into City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, friends, we're just seconds from a break. I've got several more clips I'd like to play for you today, some of which are going to go into the church itself. Don Lemon does some reporting from inside there, but we're also going to be hearing from some of the prosecutors as well, from the Department of Justice and the actions that they are pledging to take as it relates to the upheaval of this church service. They commandeer this church service, taking over, preventing worshipers from coming together to worship Jesus Christ. We're going to be back in just 1 minute. This is Crosstalk coming your way from the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, do creationists say that the biblical flood laid down all the fossils?
No, we don't, Chris. Now, we do think that the flood of Noah's day is responsible for most of the fossils in geologic strata, but certainly not all. We talk about a time of residual catastrophism after the flood, which included the Ice Age. During this time, a lot of fossils were formed. Ice Age fossils would typically lie on top of the flood fossils, which came earlier. Now, of course, there are some fossils being formed today in minor catastrophes, minor floods, minor tsunamis, but these are of local extent, not like the fossils in strata from the flood. Chris, the biblical story of Noah's flood is absolutely essential for a full creation understanding. Let's go back to Genesis and get it right.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Yes, City's Church invaded a Southern Baptist church this past Sunday morning as protesters disrupted the church service, stood up from various locations from within the congregation itself. Yeah, they were implanted, as was Don Lemon as well. And friends, as I stated at the outset, it's my opinion that unless swift and very decisive action is taken in all of this, this is going to become an all too common occurrence. It's going to be happening in your church and your church and your church. Now, we're hearing some of the sights and sounds from the Sunday, this past Sunday. And we've got another one here of which Don Lemon is reporting from inside City's Church, and even hearing from the pastor himself.
This is the beginning of what's going to happen here. When you violate people's due process. When you pull people off the street, you start dragging them and hurting them and not abiding by the Constitution. When you start doing all of that, people get upset and angry. And if you remember what the Civil Rights Movement was about, the Civil Rights Movement was about these very kinds of protests. And for some reason, in our modern era, people think that in order to have protests, you got to be, cordoned off to a certain area and, what time you can protest. There's nothing in the Constitution that tells you what time you can protest. You can protest at any time. That's the whole point of it, is to disrupt. It's to make uncomfortable. And that's what they're doing. And that's what I believe when I say everyone has to be willing to sacrifice something. You have to make people uncomfortable in these times. If you see how uncomfortably and how harsh people are being treated on the streets, you have to be willing to go into places and disrupt and make people uncomfortable.
You hear what he's saying? It's their right, to go in and disrupt and make people feel uncomfortable. I mean, this is a private church service that's going on. It's on private property taking place. Going in for the express purpose of disrupting that. In my opinion, that's trespassing, is it not? But here we have Don Lemon giving play-by-play as to what is taking place there. And it is, despicable, in my opinion, concerning this. I found it also very interesting that the Attorney General of the state, the Islamic Keith Ellison, was on the Don Lemon show as well, and he spoke out on this matter too as to what unfolded, and basically telling the listeners, you just got to live with this in our society, in a society like this. You just got to live with this.
Attorney General, I know you know what's going on. I'm sure you've heard of what's going on. What do you think of this and what happened at the church and all that?
Well, let me tell you, I think that, the protest is fundamental to American society. This country started in a protest, and, it's freedom of expression. People have a right to lift up their voices and make their peace. And none of us are immune from the voice of the public. So quite honestly, I think that you got the First Amendment, freedom of religion, and the First Amendment, freedom of expression. And I think that, it's just something you got to live with in a society like this.
Just something you got to live with. We're going to come in and interrupt your church services. We're going to cause mayhem. We're going to scare little children that are sitting there, in the seats. We just, that's just what it is. I mean, we just got to live like this in a society like this. This is the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. Well, it's very interesting because as the U.S. Department of Justice has vowed, and I'm looking at a story from WND.com, they have vowed to arrest and prosecute the invaders of this Minnesota Christian church to promote their anti-ICE views. One of the most prominent agitators is taunting the U.S. Attorney General to capture him. His name is William Kelly. Now, I can't even air the audio clip in which he taunts for his own arrest. It is so vile. It is so vile what he says, I cannot air the audio of it. But he demands, he calls him white supremacist and so forth, and he's got very foul language. And then compare the actions of ICE, the anti-ICE mob, to the famous New Testament account of Jesus cleansing the temple in Jerusalem in the first century.
Today we had the honor to protest with Nikema Armstrong and the Racial Justice Network. Just like Jesus did, we went into that church and we flipped tables peacefully.
You said that you asked the Lord to stay in your house, to pray for you all in your house, Lord. That is correct.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! people. Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you?
Yeah, this the pastor you could hear in the background yelling, shame on you," as he is speaking. And it is just amazing. And justice for Renee Good. I mean, isn't she the one that the ICE officer warned, don't make bad decisions today? And next thing you know, allegedly hit an ICE officer. I mean, the story broke here just days ago about the internal bleeding of this officer. How did that happen? Very interesting as this all continues to unfold. And friends, as we look at Newsmax.com, the U.S. Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon said that her agency is investigating federal civil rights violation by these people, describing, or rather desecrating, a house of worship and interfering with Christian worshipers. Attorney General Pam Bondi also weighed in on social media, saying that any violations of federal law would be prosecuted. Nikema Levy-Armstrong, who participated in the protest and leads the local grassroots civil rights organization Racial Justice Network, dismissed the potential DOJ investigation as a sham and a distraction from federal agents' actions in Minneapolis-St. Paul. When you think about the federal government unleashing barbaric ICE agents upon our community and all the harm that they have caused us, to have someone serving as a pastor who oversees these ICE agents is almost unfathomable to me, said Armstrong, who added she is an ordained reverend. If people are more concerned about someone coming to a church on a Sunday and disrupting business as usual than they are about the atrocities that we are experiencing in our community, then they need to check their theology and the need to check their hearts. That's what she is saying. Also from the Washington Stand, Nikema Levy-Armstrong is a Minneapolis area activist who leads the Racial Justice Network, was previously charged in connection with a BLM demonstration at the Mall of America in 2015. That was before the BLM riots in 2020. Levy-Armstrong calls herself a reverend, most likely receiving ordination in the Evangelical Covenant Church, they write, a small evangelical denomination that broke away from the Lutheran Church of Sweden in 1885. In the mid-2010s, Levy-Armstrong preached every other month at First Covenant Church of Minneapolis. In June of 2019, the ECC expelled this church from its roster by a 2/3 supermajority because it found them to be out of harmony with the standards of marriage by permitting so-called same-sex marriage. Western Journal reporting Nikema Levy-Armstrong, an alleged organizer of the invasion, did some of President Trump's Justice Department's work for them by posting the names of those involved in the incident on social media. She writes, "Thank you to all of the activists who showed up and independent journalists Georgia Fort, Don Lemon, DeWoke Farmer 2, Brixton Hughes. Special thanks to Monique Colors Doty, Chantel Allen, Satara Strong Allen for co-organizing this mission from Black Lives Matter Minnesota and Black Lives Matter Twin Cities Metro, along with Racial Justice Network." Christian Post tells us, as we heard earlier, that Don Lemon likened the recent participation in the disruption of a Minnesota church service to Jesus Christ overturning the tables in the temple, and implied during a podcast earlier this week that the outraged congregants were white supremacists. Quote, "Jesus turned the tables over in the temple, right? He flipped the tables because he was tired of them not doing what they were supposed to do in his Father's house and not living up to the tenets of Christianity," Lemon said. He claims they went there to talk and blames the pastor for telling them to leave. Blaming the pastor. Lemon went on to criticize Pastor Jonathan Parnell, saying, "I think if you're going to be a representative of our Lord and of our God, then perhaps you should conduct yourself as such," said Lemon. Now keep in mind, Lemon married to another man, so-called marriage. He said, "I understand that people don't encounter this all the time, that it can be unnerving for some people, especially for young people, but I think in the way that you handled it with young people is what I said before. This is what America is about," he said. "This is the reason we have a Constitution. People don't always agree. This is part of the rights that we've given under the Constitution we may not like." Really? That is constitutional, to storm into a church, to disrupt the free exercise of religion? The Daily Signal reporting that these agitators didn't just confront a church, they also employ an ICE employee. They harassed innocent men and women and children for the crime of worshiping God. Little children don't deserve to have their songs of praise interrupted by aggressive chanting. Newsmax reports President Trump called for those involved in the church raid in Minnesota to serve jail time. Just hours after the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, told Newsmax that she is seeking to prosecute the perpetrators. Just watched footage of the church raid in Minnesota by the agitators and insurrectionists, Trump wrote on Truth Social early yesterday morning. These people are professionals. No person acts the way they act. They are highly trained to scream, rant, and rave like lunatics in a certain manner, just like they are doing. They are troublemakers, he wrote, who should be thrown in jail or thrown out of the country. Those words posted by President Donald Trump. Also, as we look at the Western Journal, Governor Tim Walz's office provided a statement to Fox News saying that the governor has repeatedly and unequivocally urged protesters to do so peacefully. While people have a right to speak out, he in no way supports interrupting a place of worship. Isn't that something, though? I played a clip at the very beginning how he was accusing, wouldn't put it past the Trump administration to interrupt church services. WesternJournal.com also reporting the Department of Justice reportedly issued grand jury subpoenas yesterday to some of Minnesota's top Democratic lawmakers, including Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, the Attorney General Keith Ellison, and others. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche told Fox News the liberal lawmakers' anti-ICE stance and public statements against federal agents are borderline criminal. He said when the governor or the mayor threaten our officers, when the mayor suggests that he's encouraging citizens to call 911 when they see ICE officers, that is very close to a federal crime, he said. I've got more, and we'll have some further news audio clips here after the break. Coming from Harmeet Dillon from the Department of Justice. So stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Is it okay to abort a baby? People give many reasons why abortion is an acceptable choice. The inconvenience of pregnancy, infant disabilities. It's the woman's body. It's not a baby. This is a result of rape or incest. Incompetence of parents. And she's not ready to be a parent. In the DVD, 7 Reasons, Ray Comfort addresses these 7 questions, reasoning with college students and people on the street about whether such objections are justified. You will see those who are ardently pro-choice change their mind in moments. This powerful 42-minute DVD is available for a donation of $9 or 5 copies for a donation of $22 when you call VCY 1-800-729-9829. Ask for the DVD 7 Reasons.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network today, addressing the city's church that was invaded this past Sunday. So much breaking forth even in the last 24 hours pertaining to this as well. You'll be hearing some clips coming to us from the Department of Justice as well, from the Dissenter.com. And when the Department of Justice is investigating this incident under the FACE Act, which prohibits interfering with religious services, some Minnesota leaders aren't just excusing the behavior, they're celebrating it. There's an individual called Lay Fink. He's, according to the article here, a transvestite state representative who took to Facebook to compare the church invasion to the 1989 ACT UP protest in St. Patrick's Cathedral. He called the city's church action a form of moral resistance, praised the disruption on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and openly called for more of the same, saying, "This must continue until ICE is out of our state." From WND.com, anti-ICE activists are not just invading Christian church services, they're apparently harassing ordinary American citizens simply trying to eat lunch. Alpha News reports that what began as a casual lunch between 5 Twin Cities software engineers quickly escalated into a frightening encounter after the men were misidentified. Hear that? Misidentified as undercover federal agents, and protesters were alerted to the Minneapolis restaurant where they were dining. Dozens of agitators were drawn to the restaurant within 15 minutes because of the alert and began blowing whistles and intimidating the diners. In video of the incident, a protester asked, "Who do you work with here?" "We do custom apps for a whole bunch of companies around Minnesota and the country," one of the men answered. One of the engineers asked the crowd, "Do I look like an ICE agent?" One woman replied, "Yeah, you look like a ICE agent," and she put expletives in there as well, which I will not say. The pastor of the church, Jonathan Parnell, released this statement, and they have this posted on the church's website at citieschurch.com. It's a response to the disruption of our January 18 worship service. In this statement, he says, "Jesus is real. When we gather on Sunday mornings to worship him, we are gladly giving ourselves to what is most central and sacred in our life together. We worship Jesus." Stretches as the main banner of our church alongside two other pursuits that flow from it, leaving one another and seeking the good of the Twin Cities. On Sunday, January 18, a group of agitators jarringly disrupted our worship gathering. They accosted members of our congregation, frightened children, and created a scene marked by intimidation and threat. Such conduct is shameful, unlawful, and will not be tolerated. Invading a church service to disrupt the worship of Jesus or any other act of worship is protected by neither the Christian scriptures nor the laws of this nation. We welcome respectful dialogue about present issues and about how the realness of Jesus as revealed in the Bible provides the only final answer to the world's most complex and intractable problems. Jesus Christ, the divine Son of God, lived, died, and rose again for the rescue of all who put their faith in him. He offers a love that transcends cultures, borders, policies, and politics. As those who have been loved and rescued by him, we will not shrink from worshiping Jesus, nor will we stop teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah, Acts 5:42. Church buildings are meant to be places of peace and solace where worshipers can hear and live out this message. We therefore call on local, state, and national leaders to protect this fundamental right. We are evaluating next steps with our legal counsel. That from Jonathan Parnell, pastor of Cities Church. Well, Don Lemon reportedly will be arrested by the Trump administration under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act, reports townhall.com. And just want to air some of the statements that have been made. This from the Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon. This one was on an interview from Newsmax.com.
The Attorney General has been on this from the moment it happened. There are already 2 prosecutors from my office on their way to Minneapolis, and they'll be there this morning. We have an FBI team assembled and local prosecutors as well. This is going to get the highest attention from the Department of Justice because there is no more sacred right in our Constitution than the right to assemble and pray to God. And there are federal laws that protect that right. And what happened here was a shameful exercise of virtue signaling, disruption, fear, terror. You can see children in this video being ushered out the back by their terrorized mothers. And this is illegal. And I want to add that the Biden administration prosecuted people peacefully praying outside abortion clinics for much, much less.
Much, much less than this. Yes, the Biden administration prosecuted people for praying outside a clinic. And now here's another statement, this from Harmeet Dillon on The Benny Show.
We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this. All of those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is a act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act. So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an affinity to the FACE Act, an obvious and egregious demonstrable violation of the FACE Act, because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played a video of a man, a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is on screen. First time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. And in fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242 civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is, if 3 grandmas got together to pray outside an abortion clinic for the souls of the people inside, and including unborn children, they would say, oh, that's not just a violation of the Klan Act, that's a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of women going in there to get abortions. And so we're going to add additional charges and punish that more and make it from a misdemeanor under the FACE Act to a felony under the Klan Act. And
that's from Harmeet Dillon appearing on the Benny Show. And friends, we've got a couple more clips from Harmeet we're going to air as well, but it's just mind-blowing here. We've got from the Daily Signal, the key staffer from Minneapolis' left-leaning district attorney praising the anti-ICE agitators who invaded this church service, suggested he was present at this incident. Jamal Lundy, the Intergovernmental Affairs Coordinator for the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, posted on Facebook that he met up with a group of protesters and got in some good trouble, highlighting that a church in the Twin Cities has a pastor that is an ICE field director, end of quote. And again, when you have a state legislator that is urging anti-ICE protesters to storm even more churches. Let's go back to Harmeet. This is some clips that came through WND.com, and this first one from Newsmax, in which Harmeet is saying that there is no right to protest in this, is using this private church property here.
You don't have a right to protest in somebody's house, and that was God's house. And the First Amendment does not apply to your barging in as a trespasser into God's house and literally violating federal law by disrupting a worship in progress and terrorizing children and moms and making them cry and running out the back door. And then he goes out and he says, this was the whole purpose. We want to put people in fear so that they rethink their policies. No. Not in a house of worship, a sanctuary of God. It is outrageous behavior. And by the way, outside he's backtracking, and I think he realizes he's in hot water now by some of his statements he made yesterday to try to clean up what he did after I got activated, and the Attorney General got activated on this. But the First Amendment does not protect journalists when they're committing crimes themselves.
And again, friends, it looks like Don Lemon may be a target by the Department of Justice in this regard. But Harmeet Dillon also said that this is not going to be repeated. I mean, very forcible about this as she was on, I believe it's the Ali Bradley TV. Here's what Harmeet had to say.
This will not be repeated, and we have dispatched a team of experienced civil rights prosecutors, not just civil attorneys, prosecutors to the scene who are working with FBI. They are interviewing witnesses. They are reviewing video. We have more people reviewing video back home in D.C., and we are putting the full weight of the federal government towards ensuring that the people who committed these offenses, at least at a minimum the FACE Act offenses and possibly more, face justice, and that there is a deterrence to doing this kind of thing again at any house of worship of any denomination in America.
Okay, just one more clip here for you today, and this is the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche as he was on the program Freedom of the Press, and he spoke to this issue as well.
Freedom of the press extends to a lot of different areas. It does not extend to somebody just trespassing and being embedded with a group of rioters and being part of the group that storms inside of a church. So as our Assistant Attorney General said yesterday, we are absolutely investigating that conduct, and the fact that man, that Mr. Lemon, thought that was a good idea to do that and then to race away from it saying it was freedom of the press, well, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And my correction here, the program is not called Freedom of the Press. He was speaking on Freedom of the Press, and I believe that was Newsmax.com that he was speaking with those comments. Friends, I'd like to open our phone lines today to get your reaction to what transpired at City's Church this past Sunday, and your thoughts on, does the Department of Justice need to clamp down hard and fast on this issue? Our number, 800-733-9829 to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. What's interesting, from the Department of Homeland Security, Monday early evening, they put out this a press release indicating we have arrested over 10,000 criminal aliens who are killing Americans, hurting children, and raining terror in Minneapolis because Tim Walz and Jacob Fry refuse to protect their own people and instead protect criminals, said Kristi Noem. She's secretary. In the last 6 weeks, our brave DHS law enforcement have arrested 3,000 criminal illegal aliens, including vicious murderers, rapists, child pedophiles, and incredibly dangerous individuals. You know, these protesters that are out there trying to stop ICE, this is who they are harboring in their community. And this is what the mayhem that has been conducted on citizens, upon children. This past weekend, ICE arrested dangerous criminals during Operation Metro Surge. It included a criminal alien from Laos with convictions for homicide and robbery, a criminal illegal from Laos with a conviction for homicide. Here's another one from Somalia with convictions for assault, forgery, and obstruction and arrest for drug possession and theft. And yet another from Guatemala, sexual assault, driving under the influence. Another from Laos, a sex offender, sodomy on a 12-year-old girl, and sexual assault. Also from Vietnam, multiple arrests for driving under the influence, larceny, assault, making terrorist threats, and an arrest for fraud. One from Cuba, arrest for aggravated assault with a weapon, larceny, assault, possession of cocaine, robbery with a gun, and the list goes on. These are the people that they're taking off the street trying to protect the public, and people are saying, no, we want this. Back in a minute.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Much of the nation is watching in horror the video coming out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, where this Minneapolis church was raided by leftists. They claim they were there protesting ICE, and yet they seem to be being led by Don Lemon, the former CNN employee who I guess now has his own podcast. He confronted the pastor at the front of the church and said that this was legal, constitutional, First Amendment right to protest. Not on private property, it's not. Don Lemon went on to say that, yes, he realizes this could be traumatic for people. Indeed it is. It's also dangerous. Apparently, there is the thought that one of the pastors of that church is connected to ICE. Regardless, this is a private church service. It's private property. But my friends, this is the kind of Civil War tactics that I think we're going to increasingly see funded by enemies, foreign and domestic, as the church is now under assault in America.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network, and friends, Department of Homeland Security said that since President Trump took office, Governor Walz and his fellow sanctuary politicians have refused to cooperate with ICE and have released, hear that, released nearly 470 criminal illegal aliens back onto the streets of Minnesota. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Jacob Fry to put the safety of Minnesotans first and to honor U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrest detainers of more than 1,360, including violent criminals in their custody across all jurisdictions in Minnesota. And to date, rather than turn them over to ICE to be deported, Governor Walz and his associates have put them right back on the streets of Minnesota. Your thoughts on this issue today, 800-733-9829. Bloomington, Illinois. Greg, you're on the air.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I always got to ask this group of protesters and that tough guy with the beard and the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, if they're such social justice warriors, why didn't they go to a mosque and do their protesting?
Yeah.
I think we know why. But, why didn't Don Lemon go to a mosque and discuss how Islam treats homosexuals?
Yeah. Great question.
He got a rude awakening.
Yeah, indeed.
All right.
Great question. Thank you,
Have
Greg.
a good day.
Thanks. Drew is next to Milwaukee. You're on the air.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking my call. I think the DOJ should really charge these protesters with felonies and really make a statement, because before you know it, it's going to get way out of hand. And if we don't act on this now and put a stop to it, it's going to get worse and worse. And also, I think they need to look at this as a hate crime, because there's a reason why they chose this church. And I don't want this to come out the wrong way, Jim, but why didn't they choose a church, another Baptist church, where the congregation might have been possibly more mixed, or even more like a black church? I bet you things would have maybe turned out differently.
Yeah.
I think they targeted this church because maybe they knew that the congregants were probably mostly, I don't want this to come up, but white. So maybe a hate crime could be enhanced.
Well,
I just think it's a travesty all the way around.
It is a travesty, and Don Lemon seemed to point to that, that this was carefully chosen about those that would go in there. They wanted to try to make some kind of racial point through all of this. So you've got some good observations there, Drew. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Jim.
Angela's next near Lake Superior. You're on the air.
Hi, Jim. Listen, I can't stop smiling. I am so thrilled to hear every little report, part of the report that Harmeet gave us. Thank you to you and your crew for finding that and letting us hear that. I'll be looking for that. Also, I'd like to add one fact about the all the people that I have heard of or read about that were in whatever state, usually in the Midwest, arrested for praying outside abortion clinics, that they were not speaking the words. They were not speaking so other people could hear them. They were praying silently.
Yeah. Yep. I can't tolerate that, though, Angela. Thank you for your call. Good point. Jerry is calling next from Whitewater. You're on the air.
I haven't heard one thing about, did anybody call the police? These people breaking in like that could have come in to shoot the church up. I never heard one comment from anyone that the police were called. It's unbelievable. And there's got to be some kind of prosecution that can go against the governor and all the Democrats there that are propagating this, causing all this to happen.
Yeah.
This is not a republic there in Minnesota. This is socialist, communistic tactic.
It is that tactic. You're right, Jerry. And again, this coming Monday, Lord willing, we'll be joined by Bill Federer, and we're going to dissect that a little bit further, because the interruption of church services is certainly the MO that is utilized. Thank you for the call. We've got Al in Bridgeport, West Virginia. You're on the air.
Hey, Brother Jim. Thanks for taking my call. I want to make a comment about the so-called AG in Minnesota. I am very surprised that he knew the second part of the First Amendment of freedom of religion. That was a shocker to me that he mentioned that. So they want to talk about the First Amendment and freedom of speech, but then on the other hand, they'll disrupt a worship service for folks like us that are, worshiping, and that's our right as a United States citizen. Yeah. And they want to talk about due process, and illegal aliens don't get due process. They're not citizens. And hey, the Lord said they hated him before they hated us, Jim, and
Indeed.
that's what we're seeing today.
Thank you, Al.
So, God bless you, and God bless all the saints, Jim. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Let's go to Bruce and Thorpe. You're on the air.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Only Jesus. We need to stand up for Jesus Christ because if we don't, divided, we will fall. God bless you.
Thank you, Bruce. Let's go to David in Illinois, Hillsborough, Illinois. You're on the air, David.
Yeah. Hi, Jim. You had Usama on, and you were talking about the Muslim plan to take over America. Had really good stuff. And I was just thinking, all these protests and what happened in Minneapolis, is it possible that that's more of a distraction to get our attention away from what Islam, the Muslims, are planning to do? Because that really distracts us. We're so focused on all these protests and all this violence and all this stuff. And in the meantime, what are the Muslims doing in the background?
Okay, thank you for that question here, David. And again, we'll be further into that on Monday. Let's go to Nancy in Fairview, Texas. You're on the air.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it just might be a good time to go back and watch that documentary, Enemies Within the Church. And I think it's pretty interesting that they're going after a Southern Baptist church. I've heard it said that if they can take down the Southern Baptist church, the convention, he can take down any church.
Nancy, thank you for your call as well. Friends, again, very troubling, and continue to keep this matter in your prayers as well, and that the Justice Department will see what I's need to be dotted, what T's need to be crossed. But in my opinion, there does need to be very swift action taken in all of this as well. But friends, God is on the throne, and just even as the pastor said, we are here to worship Jesus and proclaim him as Messiah. Let's continue to be light. Let's continue to be salt. God bless you. Thanks for listening to Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.